What is a dead giveaway that someone is creepy or a weirdo? Story 1. I was out with some friends recently for a friend's birthday, along with my 20-year-old sister. This mofo, who we'd never met and was a friend of a friend, came along, made comments all night to my sister about how unfrickable she was. She didn't tell me until after we left, which was early on, and absolutely burst into tears in the pouring rain whilst we went for a taxi. Safe to say, if I ever see this guy again, I'm going to give him some choice words and several places to put fake teeth. Just making comments that are outright intimate and vulgar to girls, young ones at that, is a sign of a freaking maniac. Had a similar thing where this guy was being oddly hostile to one of my guy's friends and talking bad to me about this guy's ex. She's still a friend, and we were all hanging out together. We were all friendly, but he kept making comments about how the two who used to date would probably bang if he left them at the table alone together too long with the guy friend when I wasn't around. Kept telling me he thought the girl was used goods, and he wouldn't go near her when neither of them was around. Importantly, she didn't know about any of this since he only said it to me or my guy friend, and I didn't know about anything he said to my guy friend, or to her. Fast forward a few hours, and after I left for the night, apparently this guy was not only starting to flirt with her, but took her home. Honestly, the most confusing thing. Once we figured out what actually went down over the next couple of days, it just seemed so creepy and planned. I learned that when my friend and I stepped away, he was making a point to compliment this girl too. Needless to say, the girl cut off everything with the guy once she found out. Story 2. Sincere question, and no, my knickers aren't in a bunch. A lot of people rightly talk about the lack of filters or social understanding as a creepy flag. I'm autistic in the "you don't look autistic" way. Note that is rude AF, and was just diagnosed. I've learned that I do these things. Someone said saying, "I don't mean to be creepy or rude" is a red flag. I've said that exact thing many times because I'm so afraid of being misunderstood. A bunch of the things listed here are things I'm trying to learn to replace because I'm isolated and just want to have friends. I'm just going to ask, is the common perception that we are creepy from jumping? Many of the autistic people I talk to online, ASD1, are borderline seppuku because we just want to know how to make friends and stuff. I do get it. A lot of our odd behavior could be seen as creepy, but it's very hard to socialize when people decide you're off at hello and then talk about how creepy you are. It makes us more afraid, and as a result, creepier. Is there a socially normal way to say, "I say weird stuff by accident sometimes, so please bear with me"? Is that an acceptable way to say it? Please be nice. Also autistic here, and there's research that shows allistics can twig us as autistic within seconds, but they don't know it's autism, so they just think we're weird. The key is finding other autistic or ADHD people to hang out with. All my closest friends are one or both. I'm both. To be honest, I also wear a pin badge on my bag strap that says I'm autistic, and I've found people have been more accommodating since I started wearing it. Story 3. Chris Hansen asks them to have a seat. I once saw Chris Hansen at an airport bar, and since he appeared to be unoccupied, I approached to confirm and possibly commend him for his work. He received me graciously and explained that he was waiting out a 2-hour delay and wouldn't mind my company or conversation, so he invited me to take a seat. I don't remember what happened next, but I'm posting this from jail. I have always had this idea in my head that it's possible Chris Hansen makes the best iced tea. Like, not everyone pours themselves a glass, but they always seem a little calmer after they do. It's probably delicious. Like, not full-on sweet tea, but just enough sugar to cut the bitterness. Maybe he wipes the rim of each glass with a sprig of mint. I like to imagine he carefully crafts each pitcher. He puts love into it, knowing that it'll be the last tea that isn't Lipton these buttholes ever drink. But I'll never know. You only get to taste Chris Hansen's tea if you're a monster. Just like with Eve and the apple. The only way to truly know how it tastes is to walk a dark path. I'll always be left to wonder. Story 4. I knew a guy. He was a coworker, and I went out with him and another coworker to the club. I didn't like him at all, and he had a funny feeling about him. But the other coworker was all right, so I figured everything would be fine. Within the night, he showed me an explicit video of himself, unprompted, stole tips from the bar counter, and insisted I have a drink even though I was DDing and had previously told him I wouldn't be drinking, which he got very angry about because he bought it and handed it to me. At the end of the night, we went to 7-Eleven. The cashier instantly got angry as soon as he saw this guy and threatened to call the cops if he didn't leave. The guy just laughed it off and refused to explain what that was all about, only to explain that people are crazy and blow things out of proportion all the time. I never hung out with him again after that. He got fired a few weeks later after getting into a fight and going to jail. Couldn't have happened to a better guy. Story 5. Met a girl through class. She immediately became very attached and asked for my apartment key the second time we hung out together, which was about 1 week apart. We were both girls, and we literally hung out twice. Yeah, this is such a blast from the past, and I just now texted my roommate at the time to reminisce about this weird experience. Thinking back, I think the girl was lonely. She's an international student from Korea, but not sure how long she's been in the US, and the first time we hung out, it was a study session that ran very late, and she slept over. I think the second time we met up was for another study session, and that's when she asked for my key. In her head, she was probably trying to be sarcastic. You should just give me a key to your house with how much we have to study, and cringes looking back on it to this day. And then she reassures herself that it's fine. The other person probably doesn't even remember it happened. Meanwhile, this is happening. Story 6. I know this seems a bit vague, but people who don't know how to filter themselves. Here's an example. I once read an internet story about when a woman went on a date with a guy. I'm pretty sure it was a first date, and while they were sitting down and chatting, he suddenly reached over, started rubbing her belly, and said something along the lines of, "Someday, my child will grow here. I'm gonna put a couple of strong boys in ya." Girl ran, blocked him on everything, and never saw nor spoke to him again. Stuff like that. Like they don't know how to respect boundaries or know what appropriate and inappropriate things are to say or do around other people. And before anyone goes at me, I'm not talking about people with conditions like autism. Most autistic people still generally know how to interact with others, though it might be more difficult for them to pick up on social cues. I highly doubt most people with any kind of mental, behavioral, or developmental condition would look at that scenario and be like, yeah, that's totally acceptable behavior. No, absolutely not. Story 7. Where's my hug? How about a smile? You look so much prettier when you smile. Ugh, I winced reading this. When I was a teenager working fast food, there was an old guy who looked me dead in the eye, took his index fingers to either side of his mouth, and pushed them up to make the creepiest looking grin held up by his fingers, but said nothing. There was a glass pane between us, so the customers had a full view of us working. Literally felt like a zoo animal sometimes, because of entitled creeps like him. I'm guilty of this one. Said it a lot as a kid because my sister's friends would always say it to me when I gave her a hug. I'm autistic. I was very huggy when I was younger. So I just thought, oh, that's what we do when we want affection. Didn't realize how creepy it was. I was 23 when I stopped saying that. Before anyone gets the wrong idea, I was the youngest. Story 8. Had an old man at work come up and start stroking my hair. He said it looked like cotton candy. It was pink and blue. It went on for a bit too long. I'm imagining an old man at a circus stroking a comically large serving of cotton candy and not understanding it is consumable. People always used to stroke my sister's hair when she was a kid. She had real pretty red hair, and everyone loved it. She hated it and always wanted to dye it, but my parents wouldn't let her. Thankfully, people don't do that as much now that she's an adult. Don't stroke other people's hair without their permission. It's just weird. I have red, curly hair and still have people try to touch it, and I'm in my 40s, and they think it's the rudest thing when I say politely, please don't touch my hair. I don't know about anyone else, but keep your hands to yourself was a concept I learned in preschool. Story 9. They tell you who you are and what you like, and if you stand up for yourself, they gaslight you and try to play games with your boundaries to break them down. I had this to a lesser extent. Had this good friend when I was figuring out my sexuality because I found that I was attracted to this guy who was also around the good friend because we were a group of 3 who is now my fiancé. Anytime I would talk about what I thought I was, that good friend would be like, "No, you just want to be like us." Or if I said I liked something and he was surprised I liked it, he would be like, "No, I don't think you do." Such a wienerhead. Sadly, me and my boyfriend let him move in before we realized what a jerkwad he was, but we eventually had him move out and haven't talked to him in over 7 months. Story 10. I have problems trying to meet new people, like shy and awkward, and it leaves me terrified women will assume I'm one of those nice guys incels who blame women for their lack of success. Aside from some obvious things, this thread isn't as comforting as I'd hoped. I feel you, dude. I'm autistic, and when someone asks about traits of weirdos, most people just list autistic traits. Not intentionally, of course, and we just have to learn how to deal with it. But, that stuff hurts sometimes. You're just shy. There's nothing wrong with being shy or awkward. Lots and lots of people are, and lots of people have the same fear as you. From my experience, people who don't know how to talk to people talk about the most interesting stuff and are great to listen to. You're worrying too much, seriously. You are shy, but I'm sure you have so much more than that. Story 11. With one repeat creeper at my office, I stated loudly enough for all my other coworkers to hear, "Wow, you have no concept of personal space, do you?" Everybody looked in our direction, and that was enough to get him to back off from then on. To everybody responding to you saying your first inclination is to shout at people, consider the subject of this thread. I'm not referring to my average colleagues. I work in a maintenance field, and at times, we need multiple hands on a project and work shoulder to shoulder with no problems. I'm referring to a guy who would step close enough for me to feel his breath just to start a conversation. I didn't appreciate him constantly brushing against me when he had no reason to, especially after I kept stepping away. The shouting, in my case, was after a pattern of inappropriate behavior and effective in getting him to leave me alone. Story 12. They constantly have interactions where everyone else is completely crazy. Normal people don't get banned from Costco, spit on gas station attendants, and get tased by the cops. If this stuff happens to you, you're probably a creepy weirdo. And yes, I'm sure all of your ex-girlfriends were the problem. My God, this sounds exactly like one of my coworkers. It is an intense level of delusion. Yeah, I had a coworker who said that he basically got into a confrontation while driving with someone pretty much every week. He was legitimately confused when he realized he was the only one. If 1 or 2 of your exes were crazy or buttholes, I can give you the benefit of the doubt. But if all of them are, you're the problem. You ran into a butthole in the morning, you ran into a butthole. You run into buttholes all day, you're the butthole. Raylan Givens. Story 13. They don't understand personal space. The worst is when you take a step back from them and they keep filling in that space. I have a coworker that does this. I started backing away at an angle and slowly leading him in circles. I made a game out of it. My record was 3 full rotations before he noticed what I was doing. He wasn't amused. I, however, was very amused. I do this with my boyfriend when he's on my heels at the grocery store. I think he has unhealed trauma from his mom leaving him in a Walmart or something. I do it in a silly manner, though, just enough to get him to notice what he's doing. Story 14. Grown men who tell teenage girls that they're mature for their age. Oh man, I said this once to the mom of twins, and I still cringe thinking about it. But I genuinely meant it as a compliment about a kid I used to babysit 10 years ago. The twins are so well-mannered and smart for their age. Not that I would want to date them. Either way, I won't use that phrase again, as I see what some use it to mean. As with many things, there's a right and a wrong way to do it. I wouldn't worry about it if your intentions were pure, as they seem to have been. Story 15. When they're stone sober and trying to pick up super drunk people at the bar. An incapacitated person cannot legally consent, so it's very creepy that sober people would be seeking to sleep with people whose ability to legally consent may be questionable. Every person's alcohol tolerance is different, so you can't always gauge a person's level of with-itness by the number of drinks they've had. A sober-appearing person may very well be blacked out. Sleeping with such a person may be found to have been assault. So, when they flip the lights on to disorient them, you're not supposed to grab one and run? Story 16. If they have absolutely zero personality outside of sleeping with people. I had a friend like this. After a while, it got kind of weird and boring. I met a girl like this about a year ago. All she ever talked about were the things she was doing with other people in bed. Before anyone says I was missing an obvious sign, nope, I clarified. She got offended that I asked. She just liked talking about stuff like that with anyone who would listen. We don't talk anymore. Her inability to talk about anything besides sleeping with people or Taylor Swift did me in. Story 17. Adults beg children to give them a kiss or a hug despite being told no. Adults taking pictures of children after being told no. My wife's cousin, everybody. My daughter asked her to stop taking pictures of her. I told her to stop, more forcefully, as well. She took a picture of me telling her to stop taking pictures of my daughter. Then she dumped all of the pictures on Facebook, where she has over 1,000 friends, most of whom aren't family or people I would be comfortable sharing pictures of my kids with. Story 18. My wife had a male coworker that built a diorama of one of her female coworkers being eaten alive by a tarantula. He then thought it would be a good idea to show the diorama to her and other coworkers. Management found him a job at another company rather than firing him. My wife and her coworkers were relieved that he was gone, grateful that he wasn't likely to consider his separation antagonistic, but worried about his future coworkers. Not really a universally applicable sign, but definitely an unambiguous sign. Story 19. Attempts to isolate you from your friends, or to take you out of public space to go somewhere alone with them. I have this family friend who was always trying to arrange one-on-one time with my younger teen sister for anything she expressed interest in. Wanted to teach her how to drive, give piano lessons. Finally called him out on that stuff and told her to keep her guard up. But everyone loves him, so can't completely distance him away. Story 20. Bruh, just the idea of building a diorama of anything sounds freaking exhausting. That's goddamn nuts. Hey Arnold! We call those Schrodinger's D-bags. They decide whether they're kidding based on how everyone reacts. There's a lot of this on the internet. How many times have you seen someone say something offensively serious and then turn around and say, geez, it was just a joke, when they get a bunch of negative reactions from them? Story 21. Anyone who tells young kids things like, oh, you're going to be a heartbreaker. Let me know when you turn 18. I bet your parents are chasing them away. I've heard enough older women say these things to my little brother, and it was always weird. Story 22. Anyone who acts too familiar or comfortable with you after just meeting you or barely knowing you, especially if they ask a lot of really personal or inappropriate questions really fast, like stuff about your intimate life, dating history, or childhood. Story 23. When they passionately discuss their collection of vintage Barbie dolls, which they claim are haunted, while offering to show you their extensive shrine dedicated to Nicolas Cage in their basement. Yeah, I hate when that happens. Story 24. You walk past them as they are looking at their phone and see they have a picture of you taken from across the food court of you unhinging your jaw to take a bite of a burger. This is awfully specific. You okay, OP? Story 25. He refers to himself as an alpha male. That's a red flag among red flags. I introduce myself as a beta fish. I start fights all the time and I can breathe air. Feed me shrimp pellets. Story 26. They are long, have small feet, no arms, and they have green and white patches on them. Bonus points if they hiss and then explode when you come close to them. Story 27. When you're having an argument with someone and they start saying things just to hurt you because they don't have a valid argument. Yeah, this one's personal. Story 28. They claim to not understand the concept of the age of consent. Alternatively, they're way too familiar with the different ages of consent in different countries. Story 29. When you're using a public urinal and a complete stranger stands directly behind you quietly for no reason. Story 30. They are pushy and don't respect boundaries. Come on, lighten up. Just sit on my lap for a second. Where's my hug? Story 31. Won't talk to you in person, but will find you and privately message you on social media. Story 32. Anyone else reading this to see if they're a weirdo, or just me and my social anxiety? You are not alone. Story 33. When they tell you all their exes, especially ex-girlfriends, were crazy. Story 34. When they were here before, they couldn't look me in the eyes. Story 35. Age is just a number, and prison is just a place. Story 36. Their username is begging for nudes from strangers. Story 37. They have a glass cage in their basement. Story 38. They're a moderator on Reddit. Story 39. Don't take no for an answer. Please leave your stories in the comments. I'd love to make a video of them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.